The rain started at exactly 2:47 p.m., which I only knew because I was staring at the clock on my computer screen, willing the workday to end. The fluorescent lights above my cubicle flickered in sympathy with the thunder, and I watched the first drops streak down the window across the open office floor. My boss's office door was closed, as it had been for most of the week, and I told myself I wasn't monitoring it. I told myself I didn't notice the precise moment she arrived each morning or the subtle shift in the air when she walked past my desk. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. Maya had been my boss for 8 months. 8 months of professional emails and weekly check-ins, and absolutely nothing that would explain why my hand shook slightly when I handed her reports. She was good at her job, brilliant actually, with this way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered, like she was cataloging every syllable for future reference. She wore tailored blazers in shades of navy and charcoal, carried the same leather portfolio every day, and took her coffee black with exactly half a packet of sugar. I knew these things the way you know the lyrics to a song you've never consciously learned. "Samantha." Her voice came from behind me, and I definitely didn't jump. "Do you have a minute?" I turned in my desk chair to find her standing there, one hand resting on the cubicle wall, and something in her expression was different. Softer around the edges. Her dark hair was pulled back like always, but a few strands had escaped, and she hadn't bothered to fix them. "Of course," I said, "because what else do you say to your boss on a Thursday afternoon when the rain is turning the windows into watercolor paintings?" "In my office?" The question mark at the end made my stomach tighten. Maya didn't ask. She stated, she directed, she led. Questions were new territory. Her office smelled like the bergamot candle she kept on the shelf behind her desk, the one she'd never actually lit in my presence. The rain was louder in here, drumming against the window that made up most of one wall, and the city beyond was blurred into impressionist streaks of gray and gold. She closed the door with a soft click that seemed to echo. "Sit," she said, gesturing to one of the chairs across from her desk, but she didn't move to sit in her own chair. Instead, she stood by the window, arms crossed, staring out at the storm like it held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. I sat. I waited. The silence stretched between us like taffy, sweet and uncomfortable, and pulling us both in directions I couldn't name. "What are we?" she said finally, still not looking at me. The words hung in the air, impossible and perfectly clear. I heard them. I understood them. But my brain couldn't quite process the fact that Maya, my boss, the woman who approved my vacation requests and CC'd me on budget emails, had just asked me a question that belonged in a completely different context. "I'm sorry." My voice came out smaller than I intended. She turned then, and the look on her face was something I'd never seen before. Vulnerable. Almost afraid. "You and me. What are we?" "Because we're not just co-workers. We haven't been for a while now, and I think we both know it." My heart was doing something arrhythmic and painful in my chest. "Ma'am, we're co-workers," I said, and even as the words left my mouth, they felt like a lie. A shield. A way to not look at what had been building between us in the spaces between professional courtesy and appropriate workplace boundaries. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Don't do that. Don't hide behind the formality." She moved closer, perching on the edge of her desk, and now we were at eye level. "I notice you, Samantha. I notice when you come in early because you couldn't sleep. I notice when you bite your lip while you're concentrating on spreadsheets. I notice that you take the stairs instead of the elevator because you hate small enclosed spaces, and that you always bring lunch from home on Mondays because you meal prep on Sundays. I notice everything about you, and that's not normal. That's not how I am with anyone else in this office." The rain intensified, a sudden downpour that made conversation feel like confession. I should have said something. I should have stood up and walked out and maintained the professional distance that kept us both safe. But I didn't. "I notice you too," I whispered. Something shifted in her expression. Relief, maybe. Or recognition. "Yeah." The half packet of sugar. The way you tap your pen 3 times before you sign anything important. How you always park in the same spot even though you don't have an assigned space. The fact that you stay late every Wednesday because that's when the week feels heaviest. I took a breath. "I notice." She was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those dark eyes that I'd been trying not to get lost in for 8 months. "So what do we do about it?" "Nothing," I said, hating the word even as I spoke it. "You're my boss. This is my career. We do nothing. That's the sensible answer. She stood, moved back to the window, putting distance between us like she needed the space to think. I've been telling myself the same thing for months. Be professional. Maintain boundaries. Don't complicate things. But then you laugh at something someone says in a meeting, and I forget what we're discussing because I'm too focused on that sound. Or you send me an email at 11 p.m. about a project detail that could have waited until morning, and I know you're home in your apartment thinking about work, probably wearing those gray sweatpants you mentioned once, and she stopped herself, shook her head. This isn't appropriate. No, I agreed. It's not. But it's honest. I stood up then, because sitting felt wrong for this conversation. Maya, I can't. My last job, I had a relationship with someone in the office, and when it ended, I lost everything. Not just the relationship. My reputation. My friendships there. People took sides, and I was the one who had to leave. I can't do that again. I won't. Her shoulders tensed. I'm not asking you to risk anything. Aren't you? Because that's what this is. The second we acknowledge this, everything changes. We can't unknow it. We can't go back to just being boss and employee. And if it goes wrong, when it goes wrong, I'm the one who loses. The words came out harder than I meant them, but they were true. They were the truth I'd been avoiding every time I let myself imagine what her hand would feel like in mine. When it goes wrong? She turned to face me fully. You've already decided it would fail? History isn't on our side. Workplace relationships, power dynamics, the fact that you could fire me if things got messy. I would never. You might not want to, but you could. That's the point. You have all the power here, and I have none. The rain was letting up, the downpour fading to a steady patter, and in the new quiet, her next words landed like stones in still water. Then I'll quit. I stared at her. What? If the power dynamic is the problem, I'll remove it. I'll find another job. We work for a company with 600 employees across 4 departments. You could transfer. I could transfer. We could both start fresh somewhere else. She said it like it was simple, like appending our entire professional lives was a reasonable solution to whatever this thing between us was. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking the clearest I have in months. She moved toward me, slow and deliberate, until we were close enough that I could see the flecks of amber in her dark eyes. I've spent 8 months trying to ignore this. Trying to be the responsible boss who maintains appropriate boundaries. But I think about you constantly. When I'm reviewing contracts, when I'm in meetings, when I'm home at night trying to convince myself that this will pass. It hasn't passed. It's gotten worse. My breath caught. Maya. Tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me I'm imagining this, and I'll stop. I'll go back to being your boss and nothing more, and we'll never talk about this again. I couldn't. The words wouldn't come, because they would have been lies, and I was tired of lying to myself about what I felt every time she smiled at me in the break room or complimented my work or simply existed in the same space. I feel it, I admitted, and saying it out loud was like stepping off a cliff. But feeling it doesn't mean acting on it is smart. Since when is love smart? The word hung between us, too big and too soon and too exactly right. Love. Not attraction, not interest, not a workplace crush that would fade with time. Love. We barely know each other outside of work, I said weakly. Then let's change that. Have dinner with me. Not here, not in this context. Somewhere neutral. Let's see who we are when we're not trying to maintain professional distance. And if HR finds out? If someone sees us? Then we deal with it. Together. She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing mine, and the contact sent electricity up my arm. I'm not saying this will be easy. I'm not saying there won't be complications. But I'm saying I want to try. I want to know what we could be if we stopped being afraid. I looked down at our almost joined hands, at the potential crystallizing in that small space between our skin. I thought about my last relationship, about the wreckage it left behind. But I also thought about the way my day felt incomplete when Maya was out of the office. The way I'd started choosing my outfits with slightly more care, telling myself it wasn't for her. The way my apartment felt emptier on weekends because I knew I wouldn't see her until Monday. One dinner, I heard myself say. Neutral location. We don't tell anyone yet. We figure out if this is real or if it's just proximity and professionalism making us think there's something more. A smile broke across her face, transforming her from composed executive to something softer, younger, more open. One dinner. I can work with that. This is insane. Probably. We could both end up hurt. That's the risk with anything worth having. She squeezed my hand, a gentle pressure that felt like a promise and a question all at once, and I squeezed back. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming. The clock on her desk read 4:15. An hour and a half had passed since I'd been staring at my computer screen, willing the day to end. Now I wasn't sure I wanted it to. Friday night, Maya said. There's a restaurant on the east side, near the river. Quiet. They have good wine and better privacy. You've already thought about this. I've thought about nothing but this for 3 months. 3 months. I counted backward, landing on a company retreat where we'd been assigned to the same team-building group, forced to work together on ridiculous trust exercises. She'd caught me when I'd fallen backward during one activity, her arms strong and steady, and I'd looked up at her and seen something in her eyes that made my stomach flip. I'd told myself I was imagining it. Apparently, I hadn't been. 7 o'clock? I said. 7 o'clock. I pulled my hand away gently, because if I didn't leave now, I might do something stupid like kiss her in her office where anyone could walk by and see through the glass walls. I should get back to work. Samantha. She caught my wrist, light enough that I could pull away if I wanted. I didn't want. Thank you. For being honest. For not just shutting me down. Ask me again after dinner if you should be thanking me. I left her office and walked back to my cubicle on legs that felt disconnected from my body. My computer screen had gone to sleep, and when I touched the mouse, it blazed back to life showing 4:17 p.m. The afternoon stretched ahead of me, impossible to focus on anything except the fact that I had a date with my boss. Not a work dinner. Not a team-building exercise. A date. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number that could only be one person. Don't overthink it. Just be yourself. That's all I want. I saved the number under a simple M, then deleted the message. Then I pulled up a spreadsheet and stared at numbers that refused to make sense while my mind spun with possibilities and terrors in equal measure. The rest of the week moved in a strange blur of hyper-awareness and numbness. Every interaction with Maya felt loaded, heavy with subtext that I was certain the entire office could see. But no one seemed to notice when she stopped by my desk to ask about a client report, or when our fingers brushed as she handed me a folder in the break room. We were experts at this, apparently. Hiding in plain sight. By Friday afternoon, I'd changed my outfit 3 times before work, finally settling on charcoal slacks and an emerald blouse that made my eyes look greener than they were. Professional enough for the office, nice enough for dinner. Maya had worn navy today, a fitted blazer that made her look simultaneously powerful and approachable, and when she'd arrived that morning, her eyes had found mine across the office floor for just a moment. A moment that felt like acknowledgement. Like anticipation. I left work at exactly 5, claiming an evening appointment I didn't have. The restaurant wasn't far from my apartment, which meant I had 2 hours to both prepare and spiral. I stood in my bedroom, staring at my closet like it held the secrets of the universe instead of just too many black blazers and jeans. This wasn't a work function. This wasn't professional. This was personal, intimate, terrifying. I changed into a deep wine-colored dress, simple but elegant, with a neckline that suggested without revealing. I left my hair down instead of in its usual work ponytail. Added earrings that caught the light. Looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back, nervous and hopeful and absolutely certain she was making either the best or worst decision of her life. The restaurant sat along the river, tucked between a bookstore and a wine shop, with soft lighting and privacy partitions between tables. Maya had chosen well. When I arrived at exactly 7, she was already there, standing by the host's stand, and she'd changed too. A soft gray sweater, dark jeans, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked younger. Less like my boss and more like someone I might have met at a bookstore or a coffee shop, someone I might have been brave enough to talk to if I'd seen her across a crowded room. "Hi," she said, and the simple greeting carried weight. "Hi." The host led us to a corner table, semi-private, with a view of the river through floor-to-ceiling windows. Lights from the opposite bank reflected on the dark water, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was unfamiliar. We'd never had silence between us that wasn't filled with work. "You look beautiful," Maya said finally. "So do you." The words came easier than I expected. Without the office building as context, without our professional roles creating structure, we were just two women at dinner. It was both freeing and terrifying. We ordered wine. She got red, I got white, and when the server left, Maya leaned back in her chair and studied me with an openness that made me feel transparent. "Tell me something I don't know about you," she said. "Something that has nothing to do with work." I considered the question, sipping my wine to buy time. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was a kid. Obsessed with it. I had books about ocean ecosystems, posters of whale migrations, the whole thing. But I got seasick the first time I went on a research boat during a college internship, and that was the end of that dream. She laughed, genuine and surprised. "Really? I can't picture you surrounded by fish tanks and diving gear. What can you picture me doing?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, more revealing than I intended. She didn't answer right away, her expression turning thoughtful. "Writing," she said eventually. "I've read your reports, your emails. The way you construct arguments, the clarity of your language, there's something almost lyrical about it. You could write novels. Or poetry. Something where words matter." No one had ever said anything like that to me before. Work was work, a necessary function that paid bills and filled time. The idea that Maya saw something artistic in my corporate communications made my chest tight. "What about you?" I asked. "What did you want to be?" "A dancer." She said it simply, like it wasn't a revelation. "Ballet specifically. I trained from age 6 to 18. Got accepted to a pre-professional company. But I injured my ankle badly during my senior year of high school, and the recovery didn't go well. I couldn't dance at the level I needed to, so I pivoted. Business school. Management track. Here we are." I tried to picture her in a studio, all grace and discipline, and found I could see it clearly. The way she moved through the office, economical and precise. The excellent posture. The control. "Do you miss it?" "Every day." The honesty in her voice was startling. "But you learn to build a new life with what you have instead of what you lost. That's what adults do, right? We adapt." "That sounds lonely." She met my eyes. "It has been. Until recently." The server arrived with our food, breaking the intensity of the moment, and we ate slowly, trading stories that had nothing to do with budget meetings or project deadlines. I learned that she had a sister in Portland who owned a pottery studio. That she was afraid of birds but loved almost every other animal. That she'd read the entire works of Toni Morrison in one summer during college and still thought about certain passages when she needed courage. She learned that I'd lived in 7 different cities before settling here. That I was terrible at keeping plants alive but kept trying anyway. That my mother had died when I was 23, and I still sometimes picked up my phone to call her before remembering. "I'm sorry," Maya said softly when I mentioned my mother. "That must have been devastating." "It was. It is. Grief doesn't really fade. You just get better at carrying it." She reached across the table, her hand covering mine, and this time, without the office's context, it felt natural. "Right. What was she like?" No one had asked me that in years. People expressed condolences, moved on quickly because death made them uncomfortable. But Maya sat there, patient and genuinely interested, and I found myself talking about my mother in ways I hadn't in a long time. Her love of terrible reality television. Her insistence on handwritten thank you notes. The way she'd believed I could do anything, even when I didn't believe it myself. "She would have liked you," I said, surprising myself with the admission. "Yeah." She always said I needed someone who would challenge me. Keep me from playing it too safe. Maya smiled. "Is that what I do?" Asking me to dinner was definitely a challenge. And here you are, rising to it. We stayed at the restaurant until they started turning chairs up on tables around us, the staff too polite to rush us but clearly ready to close. When we finally left, the night air was cool, and the city had that late-night quiet that made everything feel suspended dreamlike. "Can I walk you home?" Maya asked. "Or to your car?" I walked here. "I'm about 15 minutes that way." I pointed east, toward my neighborhood. "I'll walk with you, if that's okay." It was more than okay. We fell into step together, and without discussing it, Maya's hand found mine. We walked through the quiet streets, past closed shops and the occasional bar still spilling light and music onto the sidewalk, and for the first time in 8 months, I wasn't thinking about professional boundaries or workplace politics. I was just a woman walking home with someone who made her feel seen. When we reached my building, I stopped at the entrance, suddenly uncertain about what came next. Maya stood close, her hand still in mine, and the street light cast shadows across her face. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "For giving this a chance. Thank you for asking. For being brave enough to say something. Can I see you again? Like this?" "Yes." No hesitation this time. She leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away, and kissed me. Soft and brief and perfect, a question mark made physical. When she pulled back, I was smiling. "Good night, Samantha." "Good night, Maya." I watched her walk away until she turned the corner, then let myself into my building, my lips still tingling and my mind already spinning ahead to Monday, to seeing her in the office, to navigating whatever this was becoming. The weekend passed in a haze of text messages that gradually became more frequent, more personal. She sent me photos of her morning coffee. I sent her a picture of the plant I was currently failing to keep alive. We talked about nothing and everything, building a foundation outside of work that felt both fragile and essential. Monday arrived with clouds that threatened rain but never delivered. I got to the office early, as usual, and found Maya already at her desk, visible through her glass walls. She glanced up when I passed, and the smile that crossed her face was private, meant only for me. My stomach flipped. The day proceeded normally, meetings and emails and all the mundane tasks that filled our time. But there were moments, her hand on my shoulder when she stopped by my desk, lasting a second longer than necessary. The way she caught my eye during a presentation, and I knew exactly what she was thinking, that the presenter was going in circles and we were both thinking about later, about when we could talk without an audience. We were careful. So careful. But I wondered if anyone noticed the shift, the subtle electricity that seemed to hum between us now that we'd acknowledged what this was.